I have never
Whoa.
played a handheld Zelda. Unfortunately, that is the gap
Wow.
in my experience because I just never had Game Boys. I had a Game Gear, but
Oh my god.
I know.
Do you
So
just not like handheld consoles, or?
I never really knew they were a thing growing up.
Joey,
And
why didn't you tell your friend Brice about handhelds?
We should start the podcast right now and talk about this deeply disturbing situation, Brice.
Holy crap, man!
I'm not happy about it, but that's the facts.
I mean, that, do you want to actually get into it? Like, you want this to be part of the podcast?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. Aren't we? Isn't everything we do part of the podcast?
Well, ever since Craig joined the channel. What the heck? Let's start right now. Hi, everyone.
Oh.
This is the Legendary Broadcast. I'm your host, Joseph Blanchette. With me is Dustin Watts.
Ahoy, hoy.
Returning from our One Division podcast is Brice.
My parents never loved me enough to get me a Game Boy.
Yeah. or even a Game Gear or anything like that.
Oh no, I had.
Okay, what about those like Tiger Electronic toys with like the LCD screen?
Oh, I had the Aladdin one.
Okay, well,
Very cool.
And I think the first time ever we've had a special guest.
Oh wow.
We have a Shesez from the YouTube channel Boundary Break.
Well, I'm honored, Joey. Thank you so much for letting me be your first guest. That's cool.
Now, we had Ash Paulson on before he was big, but that doesn't count.
I know Ash. He's a great guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's cool.
Yeah.
But it was before he had like well, I guess he's not on there anymore, but before he had the Game Explain channel and all that stuff.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
How did you know?
That was actually it was Dustin was on an anime forum with him, I think.
It was I had gotten myself involved with a weird little, like one of those little startups that gotten. It was like a prototypical like. It was like Discord, but like, or Twitch or something like that. But early on, it was called Vocal.
I remember VOK. No, that's a brand of scooters.
VOKL. It's
okay.
VOK. This is called Vocal. VOKLE. It was basically like a prototypical. It was like during that bubble where there were a bunch of streaming sites right before they all got big.
Mm-hmm.
Vocal was one of those ones that didn't really go that far.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and like I was doing a Final Fantasy 13 podcast, and no one I knew really played it. And I asked Dustin if he knew anyone. He says, "Yeah, I know this guy Ash." He's like, "Okay." And so it's kind of like how like he joined Skype or whatever, and I met him for about 5 seconds, and we started talking about Final Fantasy 13.
That's awesome.
Actually, a pretty
he's
good
a good
podcast
guy.
for it. Yeah.
And I ended up doing like that, like multi-part like coverage of the Mega Man series.
Yep.
Oh, Ash will love that.
Days. Yeah.
That was back before that was right around the time Mega Man Legends 3 was canceled, I think.
I was there for when it got first announced. I was at the panel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was at PAX East.
That's still a hurt. That still hurts me in my soul. You know?
So
as an absence I will continue to feel.
She says, how about you talk about your YouTube channel, Boundary Break, for us for a minute before we get into the main subject.
Yeah, I just do a channel where I take the camera of any video game outside of the intended boundaries, and I try to find like interesting stuff, like stuff that the developers use as techniques to make the game work, or stuff that they left out of bounds that were never meant to be seen. Sometimes it's like Easter eggs that I guess developers hoped that one day someone would find out of bounds and stuff like that. So I just, I go through the entire contents of the game, and I try to curate all the most interesting things that I could find with that show's concept. So that's primarily what I do. But, I'm also doing regional differences between games as well. So a Pokemon one's coming up really soon. It'll be a lot of
One
fun.
of my favorite things is when you find where the cutscenes are rendered.
Oh, yeah.
So like you just go off camera, and there's like the one I remember is from like Resident Evil 4, I think. But you just go off camera and you see like the merchant there where you really shouldn't be, but that's where like the cutscene takes place. You know, you see stuff like that.
Oh yeah, or like if there's like a close-up shot of one of the characters during the cutscene, everything below the neck is just like a stiff T pose or something. And
Yeah. Or you see like their arm just kind of grow out of their body when it needs to show up. It's really weird stuff.
It's amazing.
It makes you realize how 3D games are just like, you've been out of bounds in 3D games before. It's just all blackness.
Sure.
You just realize it's just all like you're inside this big shoe box, basically. And if you turn the camera a little bit to the left, then it all messes up. So it's a pretty cool site. I'll go to search for a Boundary Break on YouTube. And you've done a few Zelda episodes, which is the topic of today's podcast. So if you remember something cool from a Zelda game that you discovered,
Absolutely. Well, okay, so I figured out Ganondorf is a Gerudo, so there's your exclusive.
But he's a man.
No, yes, but I found out that it's like one in every generation or something.
Every 100 years, I think, or something like that, or 1,000 years, maybe.
Yeah,
A man is born with a
works,
Gerudo.
But she must live for a really long time, or some like Anakin Skywalker's birth happens every 100 years. But
that's
why
interesting.
Zelda?
He brings balance.
Yeah, but why Zelda, you may ask? Because this year is the 35th anniversary of... Is it the Japanese or the American release?
It's the Japanese, I think.
Yeah. Which is a few years before we got it in America. But, 35 years.
Wow, it's a long time.
Happy birthday, Zelda.
Happy birthday. Which, they said this year's 35. It came out in 80. No, I thought it came out in 85.
I think it's 86.
I mean, obviously, the math says 86, so I believe you.
The only reason why I know that is because it's the same year that Metroid came out, and like,
gotcha.
They never talked
Kid
about
Icarus.
Metroid. That's right, Kid Icarus as well. You're right. Yep.
And I think it didn't come out until America until like 89 or 88, something like that.
But yeah, 86 was a very big year for the Famicom.
It was. I believe
right.
Dragon Quest was also 86. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, big year.
I mean, in like Mario, obviously, because it just had its 35th anniversary.
And so, when did the NES release in the US? Was that? I mean, all these games came in with it. So was it 86?
85.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did we have? What did we have for that year?
All the black box games. So
yeah,
like every single black box game came out that year. So that's like Clue Clue Land, Balloon Fight, Gumshoe.
Okay.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Golf.
Excite Bike.
Yeah.
That was a good
tennis. Who can forget tennis?
Just called tennis.
Yeah.
Joke tennis, but tennis for the NES was basically where tennis games actually started getting good.
Well, like, it might just be where they started because that was a while ago.
No. There were tennis games before tennis on the NES.
Okay.
But they weren't that good.
It was actually 87 when it released in America, so it was a couple years off. That makes more sense.
Yeah, but...
Okay. So if I remember right, the Japanese release of Zelda was a disc game, right?
Was
like a disc?
The Famicom disc. Oh yeah, that was something we never got in the US was the Famicom disc system.
Indeed.
It had
so like and like actually a lot of games got released like Metroid and I think Castlevania 2 or 3. So it actually has like a different sound chip inside. So
expanded.
Expanded, yeah. So if you played like Zelda or Castlevania in Japan on the disc system, it actually sounds like better in a lot of cases because it has more beeps and boops it can do.
Yeah, but
with 5 times more beeps and boops.
yeah, the problem with the Famicom disc system was that it was also kind of notoriously known for breaking down.
I mean,
Well, not
the NES was not 100% reliable either.
Well, plus you got in like a disc system with moving parts. You know, that you have
Gotcha.
But the main thing was loading times were just people.
Were they normal size? Did it like compact disc size, or were they like laser disc?
They were like compact discs.
Okay. They were like they were floppy discs.
What?
Were they?
Like 5 1/4 floppy? Like
no, 3.5.
No,
they were 3.5. They were their own little form factor, but I would say they were more comparable to the 3.5 inch.
Right,
but they were they were a special size. They're like this bright
the size
yellow.
of a coaster. There you go.
and they had the strangest way of locking out discs.
Okay, they do look like 3.5 inch floppies.
Nintendo that's on the end of it.
Say that again?
That's the lockout.
Okay.
Like so they couldn't make like fake discs without breaking Nintendo's trademark because like the inside of the drive had like little pins in it that fit down into the Nintendo logo.
Yeah, there were a lot of Japanese only like different types of Nintendos that never left Japan because like the disc system, then like the disc drive for the N64, the Super Nintendo had like a modem.
For television
games. Yeah.
Well, actually, yeah, but then we had the X Band, but nobody remembers the X Band.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Nobody remembers it.
X Band was a modem you could get for both they had one for the Sega Genesis, they had one for the Super NES, where you could play people.
Didn't the Wii
over the internet?
Didn't the Wii already have a Wi-Fi?
No, this is back in the Super NES and Super NES and Genesis eras.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. And then you mentioned the Wii's X Play or whatever. I don't
No,
know.
it's called X Play or X Band. Excuse me.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was. It's a cartridge that you stick another cartridge on top of and it's a modem for the.
Okay.
So you could play like Super Mario Kart against someone over whatever the internet was back then.
Well, it only did matchmaking over the internet. You actually called the person directly. And
what?
Yeah, this must have been before. Yeah, this must.
Yeah, this was
like high-speed internet. Yeah.
Yeah, this was dial-up stuff, man.
Mom,
it was
stay off
crazy
the phone.
days.
I'm playing Mario Kart.
And I played Command and Conquer with friends in high school over dial-up. You had to call them and connect. And we had what we would do is we would just say, all right, I'm going to be on answer at 3:32 or whatever. And we were so stupid.
Well, that's what the X Band, like they had the matchmaking. They took care of that.
Okay.
It also lets you check it also lets you have an email account.
Okay.
So you can check your email on your Super Nintendo.
Okay. What was that? What was the domain there? Like
X-Band. No, it was at xband.net or something like that. I'm
gonna reel the podcast back in.
Let me wrap this up real quick. It lasted for like maybe a year or two.
Yeah.
And it was honestly worked kind of. It didn't work with every game, but the games it worked for were really good.
Okay.
Like I remember playing someone at Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 on it.
Oh, so you actually had one?
Well, yeah, but someone down the road had it, and then they got tired of it, and they gave it to me, and I tried it out for a while. I still got it in the closet.
How did they get it? You said it was Japanese exclusive?
No.
Oh,
it's no. The X-Band was the opposite. It was U.S. exclusive.
Oh, because Japan wasn't going to deal with something that silly. Sticking a modem in your SNES.
They didn't have modem. They had the satellite system where you can download
Teleview. Yeah,
the Teleview where you can download the knockoff Zelda branded.
They call
product.
it BS Zelda. How appropriate they call it knockoff, and it's actually called BS Zelda.
Oh, that's funny.
It's actually not a bad version.
Yeah, I just played through it recently. Actually,
and then there's the version of like the sequel to Link to the Past that has like narration, and it's crazy. But again, actually, that brings us right back to Zelda, doesn't it?
Boom.
We got it.
See, you knew he'd get there. You just let him.
Yeah. I mean, eventually everything circles around. So, what were you guys' first Zelda game? Let's start with Dustin.
I remember playing a little bit of the original Zelda on my brother's NES back in the day, but I don't think I ever really got into it because I was a little youngin' when that game came out.
Yeah, which one was like the first one you really like played?
Oh, that's easy. Link to the Past. Oh my god, I wore my cartridge out. I played Link to the Past so much. Like, I have 100. I can say with complete honesty, I have probably 100%ed Link to the Past at least 20 times in my life.
Wow.
Over various versions.
Is that like one of those games where when you play it, you're just gonna 100% it?
Yeah, I just start playing it, and I'm like, I'll just play casual playthrough, and a couple hours later, oh wait, I 100% it again. Oh crap!
What did you think of A Link Between Worlds?
Oh, I just played that. Early 2020, and that game was really good. Honestly, I was honestly kind of surprised how it was a step back, but in a good way.
Yeah, it was cool because you could tackle any dungeon you wanted in any order, basically.
You can do that. You can do that in. You can technically do that in Link to the Past. Go in and get the items, and then just come back out and go, how am I going to do this? I mean, technically, the first 3 dungeons, there's a definite order. You got to do those. But after that, you can just kind of go wherever you want.
It wasn't Link Between Worlds originally going to be like a 3D remake of Link to the Past?
Yeah, they couldn't really decide what they wanted to do, and so they kept building it as a remake, and then they were like, change my mind. And so so it has this weird pseudo like, oh, it feels a lot like A Link to the Past, but it's not, I guess.
Yeah, it's like it feels like Nintendo made their own ROM hack.
Right.
How about you, Shesez, was your first?
My first one was the first game. I played it mostly at my uncle's house to start with. And then over time, I finally got the game, played through it, beat it. The one that I think I beat first, though, was Link's Awakening, because I had access to that, whereas the first game, it took me a little while to get that to my collection. But the very first one I ever played was the first game at my uncle's house. Whenever they would do house parties and stuff, I'd just be the black sheep in the basement playing the NES games downstairs. And so
it had a battery in it, so unlike Mario Land or whatever, like it saved your progress.
No joke. It took me 3 years, but I think I got pretty close to beating the game because
speed runs for you.
Yeah, they never delete the file, so I kept booting it back up every year. It was like Easter or something that we'd all get there. So, it's like, oh, I get to continue my adventure. It was the first game. but like I think technically the first one I ever beat was Link's Awakening. Fantastic game, by the way.
What do you think of that remake that came out a couple years ago?
I'm not a huge fan. I mean, like it does tidy some things up, so it makes it kind of like a good version to play, but I don't like that it translates the visuals of the Game Boy game as a literal aesthetic. It's like, oh, they're supposed to look like that. I was like, no, man, that was the limitations of the Game Boy. Why would you do that?
Well, actually, that and it's been continuing that theme of Nintendo making toyetic games. Like, like games that make you feel like you're playing with physical toys almost.
Right,
like,
right. And I didn't personally appreciate that. I found the original game to be an amazing experience, but it was very limited to the hardware that it worked on, but it did the most it could do with the hardware that it was given. It's a very gorgeous looking Game Boy game, comparatively speaking to its contemporaries, but fast forward 15 years, something like that. You're on a modern day console. You could have done a lot better. And they charged $60 for it too. It's just insane.
And there was still slowdown in the game.
There was weird glitches. There was weird visual effects that didn't quite work right, in my opinion. And there was in fact slowdown. Like the frame rate would toggle at times, and sometimes straight up chug.
Were they trying to stay true to how it was originally? Like, was the slowdowns in the same spot that you'd see it? Okay.
No.
Well, that's dumb then.
Yeah.
It was mostly the Switch just loading in when you go into a new area, all the information, and then after that, it ran pretty smoothly for the most part.
Yeah.
I personally really liked the little toy-like aesthetic, because it was like I'm looking down at this little toy box and I'm moving Link around and there's Dr. Rocks, and I don't know, I really like that.
I think the soundtrack was amazing.
The soundtrack was cute too, but some people were a little disappointed how it was just basically a one-for-one remake. They didn't really change anything for the better.
Right.
Yeah,
they did make some good quality of life changes, but yeah, I fall into that camp. It's like there's this great story there, and I think that if they had made it like a 3D Zelda remake, that would have been so cool. It certainly could have been done. A lot of things would have been slightly tweaked to make that experience possible, but one of the things that by going in that route that they did, by making it like a toy aesthetic, I think Dustin said like you loved the soundtrack, but to me, I didn't like that they scaled back a lot of the tracks. Like the overall theme is just like a toy flute, whereas in the original game, you can kind of tell the intent was to have like a more grandiose kind of feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
But that wouldn't sound right in the toy box aesthetic, so they just kind of matched the arrangements of the music to kind of fit into the theme of toys. So
yeah, there's a lot of like a toy piano and
right,
like that.
Toy flute, toy piano, and stuff like that. So there are some really good tracks. I will not deny that. First of all, when you beat the game, the ending theme is epic. I love it. And I think they got away with it because once you beat the game, again, in this version's interpretation, links back to the real quote unquote world. And so they're allowed to have real music instead of toy flutes and stuff. And so it's so bombastic and amazing.
Well, that's right, because the intro and the ending is 2D animated, right?
Right. He's like anime aesthetic Link. But so I think the idea is that when he's in the dream state, the headcanon that the devs created for this remake, they made it so that when he's in the dream world, he's a toy. He's like a literal toy. So, but yeah, that ending thing was great. Oh my God. I just wish the rest of the soundtrack sounded like that. I was blown away by the ending theme.
How about you, Brice? What was your first Zelda game?
My first was the original. We had an NES at the house. I had the gold cartridge, not bragging about that.
Everyone had the gold cartridge.
I think that's the default, Brice. If you said Ocarina of Time gold cartridge, I would have been a little impressed. But
Brice is like, little did you know, it's 24 karat gold, fools.
Solid gold cartridge,
right?
Oh.
And that was the very first one. And my dad got into it a lot more than we did as kids. He had a journal that he copied the maps from the dungeons into, and I thought that was pretty cool back then, but now older, I'm thinking, why do you need that? It's in the game. You just hit pause and there's your map. But yeah, that was.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, did he detail the rooms of the maps in his little journal?
I do think that he wrote bomb sites.
Oh,
and what you got in what room, like where the boomerang pops up into 1 and 2. I think he did indicate those, but
it's kind of cool. That's like your dad was like, it's like Indiana Jones 3. Your dad's like Indy Senior. You found his hidden journal. This is yours now, Junior.
Did your dad play like D&D back in the day?
No, he didn't play. Okay. That's one of the weirdest things is that he wasn't into video games really. He isn't to this day really into video games outside of Red Alert. But so that was weird that he was just so into it, and that was the first one I beat as well. Was the first one I played and beat was the original. So yeah, that was my exposure. I just loved it. I loved the music, loved everything about it, and also felt cool because I was like, Dad likes it, I like it. We're bonding.
Well, it's like my dad used to play Mario Brothers and Contra. And all that on the Nintendo, and yeah, we would play Mario and Contra. Like this, I remember having good times. But you kind of fell off after like the Super Nintendo when
sure.
There got to be more and more buttons.
Yes, the bane of every boomer.
Buttons.
The buttons.
They can handle A and B, and then you double that, and then there's trigger. So triple that. Like, come on.
That's an analog stick, Dad. And a what?
My mom and me played like Mario Brothers, like the original Mario Brothers with the pipes and stuff. A lot on the NES.
Well, they all have pipes.
Well, I mean, like, where's this the one screen?
Yeah.
And my mom actually liked whenever we rented games, she liked to rent Mappy, like the little mouse game by I think Namco.
Yeah, wow, that's a deep cut.
That's funny.
I remember my dad getting 100 lives on like Mario Brothers, and I always tried to like replicate it, and I couldn't do it.
Oh, that the old turtle shell trick.
He still talks about that to this day. So
he does.
So she says, I am married to Joey's sister, so he is my brother-in-law. So I am very much know things about their family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I figured I should let you know like why I know this about Joey's dad.
I think I mentioned that at the start, but yeah.
Oh, well, whatever. That. I'm mentioning it again.
We've had many drunken Christmases together.
That's true. Yeah, he still like brags about the turtle shell thing.
That's amazing.
I mean,
so Brice, how are you doing? Oh, sir, I'm doing well at the office. Getting a raise. Well, that's good. Can you do the turtle trick now? Because I can.
Working on it, Alan. Still working on it.
I mean, honestly, past a certain point, it's not that easy. It's not just standing there. There's a bit of a rhythm to it.
Yeah, I guess. I wouldn't know. I never got it.
I remember a couple years ago, I showed him like the Spider-Man game for the PlayStation 4.
Oh, I blew his mind, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, like, he knew games looked really good these days, but he was like, "Man, this is like watching like Spider-Man in the MCU." It's exactly like it.
Yeah.
But he would never play it. He would get confused.
Yeah.
So not to be repetitive with
you can ask me what my first game was again.
Yeah, like the first game I beat was Link's Awakening.
Nice.
I borrowed it from a friend from school because I didn't own it. And it was kind of the first game I think I played Zelda 1 and 2 at a friend's house and stuff, but this is like the first one that I really got into. And I just fell into it. I don't know how 10-year-old me beat some of those dungeons back in the day, but I definitely did.
A lot more persistent when we were kids.
Yeah, I mean, I had to look up a guide when I played the remake for like one of the last dungeons. So I was like, I forgot. Okay, now where do I throw this ball to make the
Yeah.
tower fall? I was like, okay, go over here. And I did it by myself when I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, probably when you were a
I-
kid, you exhausted every other possibility because you had that patience and persistence.
Yeah, absolutely.
You threw it literally onto every other pixel.
Yeah, but even though that was my first, it was Ocarina of Time that made me love Legend of Zelda, and I put so much time into that game. I'll replay it all the time. I would just search the world for secrets, even though I had a guide. At some point, I had a guide for it. And I was like, "Oh, what if?" Because I remember there was this little texture in like Zora's domain. It was just bad, like a bad texture overlay.
Mm-hmm.
But I was convinced that I could dive down there, and it was something important down there.
Oh yeah, that hole in Zora's domain. I remember.
Yeah. And
yeah, I checked. There's
I
nothing.
remember it was kind of. I remember it wasn't like a hard time. It wasn't a hard time for me necessarily, but I was living in a rental house, so I was far away from my friends, and I would just Zelda was kind of it was there for me. It was there for me, like when, just like to keep me company and stuff. And and my mom would be like 1 o'clock in the morning, and she was like, "Joey, go to sleep." Like, okay, Mom.
So you would say
Zora's domain hole.
Excuse me, what are you kids talking about these days?
I remember the first.
You would say that's your favorite one, Joey?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't played it in a really long time, so I'm sure if I played it now, it would have some rough spots that haven't aged very well.
You always play the 3DS version,
but no other Zelda game definitely got me that invested. I would say. The Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
I would say the same. I would say the same thing, except the Majora's Mask.
That one came close because it was so similar, but I definitely didn't spend as much time on that one. And in like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, I never had the urge to get all the hearts or all the collectibles, after Majora's Mask, pretty much.
Yeah. I don't know. There's so I like Ocarina of Time a lot as well. It's just so timeless, and they didn't overcomplicate the story. The visual style, although it's kind of ugly by today's standards, there wasn't too much to compare it to. So a lot of it too is that we kind of inject how we feel like the character should look, and we kind of forgive how it looked back then and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with later games, they were able to exact their vision, and so I don't know, something about Ocarina of Time, it just felt like it connected better with me. And then all of a sudden the later games, they felt more anime Japanesey feel, I don't know.
I mean, Ocarina of Time, after it was one of the first, if not the first, big open world. I guess there were games before it, but it was a big open world 3D adventure game.
Yeah, and you can't replicate that magic where it's just being the first to the scene like that.
I mean, and it came out for I know it sounds like we're all similar age. It came out just at the right time to resonate.
Yeah.
It was like what we needed as kids.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I ever picked up the controller and played it. It was just so weird and surreal because up to that point there was anything like it. It's like I played a whole bunch of Super Nintendo, and sure I got my hands on Mario 64 and everything, but it's still level based and all that stuff. It was still amazing in its own right, but to have a realized world to explore in, for the first time. That level of immersion was never there before in the 3D space, and it was convincing. It's just again, that's just an experience you can't replicate. Not even kids that grow up these days are ever going to know what that's quite like, because they're just going to be automatically exposed to 3D games and peaked visuals right out the gate. So
Yeah, even though like Hyrule Field is actually kind of sparse once you like break down all the secrets.
You can go to the mountain, the castle, or the other place.
Yeah, there's a few like bombable rocks. That's kind of all there is, really. But it made you feel like
too.
Oh, peahats, yeah. It was like it was still kind of breathtaking because you had this wide open space that it's like, oh, see that. I mean, people say now, like in Breath of the Wild and Skyrim and stuff, like you see that mountain, you could go to that mountain. It's like see Death Mountain, you're gonna go there later on your adventure. It's this like 2D sprite in the distance, you know.
Yeah.
It's like,
and see that 2D sprite? Well, me neither, but I'm pretty sure there's one there, and we will definitely get there at some point.
And when you got out into Hyrule Field the first time, there was like an epic cutscene, right? That showed you everything, and all the music welled up.
Yep.
That was
and then you were like, I can't wait, and then a big stupid bird's like, hold on a second.
Not so fast.
Right. Let me talk you off for a little bit there.
They like timed the 9-day cycle, so you no matter how fast you are, you would always get to nighttime before you reach the castle.
That's not true. If you rolled the entire time, you could make it just in time. Yeah.
Oh, I never did that. It's always when I see Let's Players just roll everywhere. Anyway, if you just run, then like it teaches you about the night and day cycle.
Yeah.
And all that stuff.
It teaches you that night sucks. Sorry. I hope I can do mild cursing on this podcast. I'll try to refrain. But
I think sucks is probably fine.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. But yeah, no, I loved Ocarina of Time. I would have to say I've put a lot of thought into this. I'd say my favorite one of all time is the first game, which I'll obviously have to explain that. But my favorite 3D one is Twilight Princess. I do like Ocarina of Time a great deal. That would be like a very close second, and I oftentimes have to debate in my head like which one do I like more, because I do like the world and the aesthetic, the charm of Ocarina of Time more than Twilight Princess, but I like a lot more of other things with Twilight Princess. Like I love the bosses in Twilight Princess. I think they're the coolest in the series. I do like the locales. I do like the dungeons, like the Yeti, the mansion in the Snow Peak.
Yeah. Yep.
I think one reason why Ocarina of Time remains high on my list and kind of so pure is because after that,
right,
they started adding a lot
gimmicks.
of BS to Zelda games. Yeah, gimmicks. Like in this one, you're a wolf where you have to find these tears, you know. In this one, you have to sail around and find Triforce pieces, and it takes forever to get to place. And in this one, there's not an overworld, and guess what? You have to find tears again. And it's like not fun.
Yeah,
That's
the boiling point,
Sword, by the way.
The boiling point was Skyward Sword, where it was just like, let's go full gimmick.
Yeah.
You have to flap. You have to literally flap your wings like a bird to fly through the overworld. If you can even call it that. To me, it feels like a glorified level select screen, but you know, because it's just like, hey, you can drop down to 3 locations and it'll load these 3 different zones, and you could never go from one zone to another down there. You have to go back up.
Back up.
Yep. And select it. So
yeah, and even though Majora's Mask had the time travel thing, and people remember that as a good thing overall, I think it was still a gimmick.
You also had to use the mask too, so you had to transform into like different creatures and stuff. So
yeah, and all that's fine in Majora's Mask, but you know, Ocarina of Time was the last one. It's like, yeah, you did have like the adult Link thing, but that wasn't really that big a change. It just basically meant you look a little different.
You looked cooler.
A lot cooler.
It was like a reward, honestly. It's like you had to go through a portion of the game as a little kid, and all of a sudden you're just like Leonardo DiCaprio with a sword. It's great.
Yeah. So my Zelda history is a lot different because I was a Sega fanboy growing up. So as a kid, I didn't have an SNES. I didn't have an N64. My grandparents had an SNES, so I would play Link to the Past when we visited them, and my uncle had an N64, but no Zelda games. They had Mario's and GoldenEye. So I didn't play Ocarina until I got a GameCube, and I got the Zelda collector's disc. So, I mean, I think I was in college or something when I got that. Maybe that, I don't remember exactly when, but that, so I actually was not at that age that when it first was released, that I was talking about earlier. So I had kind of gotten, I was older and had gotten exposed to better games better graphics. And so when I went to Ocarina the first time, it was well after its initial release date. And to be honest, it still held up at that time. It was still a really good game.
I was like preparing to hear like, oh, it looked like trash or whatever, but to hear that you liked it, yeah, that's like great.
And so I played through it, we beat it, and I really liked it. And then on that same disc was the original Zelda and Zelda 2, and I had to have been in high school when we got that. I don't remember. And then Majora's Mask, which I have to admit, I have never beaten Majora's Mask. I do not quite care for Majora's Mask.
If you don't try the 3DS version, it's honestly there's a lot of quality of life improvements there.
Okay.
I tried to play that version on that disc once, and it crashed after about 15 minutes.
The GameCube version also not the best emulated version of.
Really? Okay. Well, that
is
what
I'm
glorious for.
Speaking of that GameCube disc, if you pre-ordered Wind Waker at a GameStop, I think you got the Ocarina of Time Master Quest edition. Have any of you played the Master Quest?
Yeah.
Of original Zelda?
No, of Ocarina of Time.
Oh.
I have. It was interesting. I couldn't get past the Shadow Temple though. That's where I stopped. So
yeah.
Did you like it?
Basically the same game, but the dungeons are
harder,
remixed. Yeah, they're harder. They're like different. I mean, they're the same layout, but they have different key locations, and you get the items in different places. Yeah, I played it once when I got it, but I never returned to it. I think it's included in the 3DS version as well.
Gotcha.
Remember that.
So you were dogging on Wind Waker a little bit, and and that one. So you had asked what she says what his favorite one was, and good answer with Twilight Princess.
Thank you.
That is such a hard question to answer. I don't know if I can, and it depends on the day of the week, but Wind Waker is pretty consistent. Is a pretty consistent answer for me because of what you hated. That epic feel of having to sail for in real life.
I was mostly joking about that.
Oh, good.
I was mostly joking about that, yeah.
Good. I think Wind Waker is probably my favorite if I had to pick one and could never change that answer. Because that like I said, how I got the GameCube was my first real Nintendo console. So that was my first, other than the NES as a kid, but when I was older. So that was my first real Zelda that was like all mine,
Yeah, like all new.
And man, just as you start sailing, and once you get as far enough away from the island, the ocean music kicks in, and you're just like, wow, this is a big game. At least that's what it felt like. And just literally having to sail and explore everything.
It's a great game, and I used to have like a love and hate relationship with it. So when I first played it, I think I loved it, and then later on down the road, I started to resent it. But then I realized, that was kind of stupid to ever hate on the game, honestly. And I went back to it, and I was like, oh, there's so much charm to this game.
Yeah,
it has one of my favorite boss fights too. I liked the first boss with I think it's Goma in the volcano.
You're swinging around.
Yeah, and just the lighting effects and everything just looked so good with the cell shading. It was incredible.
Yeah.
With the lava casting off the belly of Goma and everything, it looked awesome.
Now Wind Waker and Twilight Princess is where the dungeon design, they started doing like you can only have one key at a time, I think.
What?
I don't remember that.
You're only carrying one key at any given point in Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, I think.
But I think you could carry more than one, right? But you're saying that like they make sure that the puzzles are formed in such a way that you'd only use one.
And maybe I'm misremembering. I just remember listening to this retrospective series, and it reminded me that the way some of those 3D Zeldas were designed, where you only ever had one key on you at any time.
Yeah.
So it was less confusing about where to go, and you wouldn't have to backtrack that much.
And I to this day am a resource hoarder in games, and so whenever, like in the original Zelda, you come across a locked door and you have a key, maybe go somewhere else, see first, because I hated spending
first Zelda,
any resource.
Yeah, first Zelda,
like,
burn that idea
Zelda.
into your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first Zelda,
you unlocked the wrong door.
universal.
You're gonna have to save up some money and buy a new key. It's like, what?
Exactly. I remember with the first Zelda, I tried to go and sneak into level 8 to get the skeleton key as soon as I could.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah,
That's really smart.
So that way you don't have to worry about it. But I died. I lost a lot of lives trying to do that too early.
Now I kind of want to do that challenge. That sounds like fun.
Do it.
Yeah,
hey,
that's cool.
Boundary break.
Right? Yeah. Well, in this case, it'd be a sequence break. Yeah.
Gosh, yeah.
That's cool.
Still relevant.
Yeah. So the way I strategize with Zelda 1 now, there's like various things you can do. So you can like grab a key right at the start of the dungeon of Zelda 1, the Zelda 1 dungeon rather. Oh my god, I said that twice. The first dungeon in Zelda. But what's cool though is that if you leave the dungeon and then go back in, the first locked door automatically unlocks. So then you get a surplus key, and I played it enough times where I know which doors are what. So I end up with a surplus of keys rather than running out. Yeah. And so that's actually why it's my favorite, is because your first time playing it, you'll spend hours trying to figure out what to do and where to go. And that is, to me, that's fun. I love the liberating feeling of going anywhere and trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
But then it has the best replay value out of any of the games, in my opinion, because when you take the time to learn how to do everything and play the game properly, you can then try to beat it as fast as you can.
Yep.
My record is like an hour and 30 minutes or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh no.
No.
I think 50 minutes. Sorry.
Okay.
Like under an hour. Yeah.
What's the world record on it?
It's really low.
I
think it's like 15 minutes, maybe less.
Yeah. Did you ever try
to
do all those tricks with glitching from one side of the screen to the other?
Well, here's the funny thing. I did that by accident one time on stream too. It was the first time it ever happened. And I had no idea what was happening. I just did it completely by chance. And
That's
I just,
awesome.
and I don't know if the clip still exists, but I just go like, what the heck is that? Why am I in the ocean? What happened? It was amazing. And then like people in the chat were like, oh, you did this thing where you like pivoted right on the side of the screen. And so you ended up on the other side. I was like, that's a thing? This is documented and people know about this?
It's awesome.
That reminds me of Ocarina of Time speed hacking, whatever they call it, where you abuse the game's memory to transport you to the end of the game at the very beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
It's some weird thing if you go somewhere where you're not supposed to when you're in the Lost Woods or something.
Right, right.
You walk through a wall. It'll say, oh, you're supposed to go to Ganon's castle now, and you're at the escape sequence in Ganon's castle or something.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Like so like the world record for Ocarina of Time is like 15 minutes, like with bugs.
Right, right. I remember watching that. Like you have to do a certain thing with a stick and a shield, and you jump backwards through a door, and then you end up falling through, outside of the game, and you get to the point where like you said, the castle is stored in the memory or something like that.
It's amazing how it's amazing how these people just like it's basically hardcore fans rewriting the code to their whim. It's like they did this in Pokemon too. It's like, oh, here's the step-by-step directions to get Mew in the game. It's like, why? How are we all figuring this out? It's like, it's crazy.
Well, it's time, and people literally just. I mean, some people. I mean, there are people who are literally decompiling the game down to its basic parts.
Yeah, trying to
And
look.
then-
That's what the Game Genie was. It was basically rewriting the code. So
Yes.
You change Mario's jump from 1 to 7, so you can jump off the screen and all that, stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah, this
Did you guys have Game Genies? Did anyone have experience with one? Do you remember any of your codes, like right now? Do you remember any?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Infinite lives in Super Mario World, D4DD C222. I'll never forget that one. I don't know why that sticks to me.
I remember Justin Bailey in Metroid.
Yeah.
Earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That one's easy to remember.
Game Genie.
I remember there being a code for Mario 1 that turned all the enemies into like Hammer Bros, but I can't remember what that's called.
Why would you want that?
That sounds awesome. I would love that challenge. I'll have to find that someday and then play it, because that sounds like a great challenge. But what's up?
We're kind of going in order, and you mentioned Twilight Princess, and that's kind of divisive.
It
among
is.
Some fans.
It is. Yeah.
It's almost. Well, hold on. It's like almost Ocarina of Time remake, in the sense that like you go to a lot of the same themed locations. So it doesn't offer a lot of new stuff until the end of it.
Well, see, that's.
What do you guys?
I mean, it's not 1-to-1. It's like it. Yeah, it's aesthetically different. The things you do in the dungeons are drastically different.
Oh yeah, a lot different. I just mean this is like.
I mean, Joey.
Why would you think this, Joey? This is a terrible opinion.
And it's where can you see a monkey slap its butt in Ocarina of Time? I ask you.
One of it was like the map has a lot of the same locations. Like, I don't think this is why it's a divisive.
It's Hyrule.
Okay, whatever. Okay, moving on.
If I'm in like Atlanta, and then 10 years later I come back to Atlanta, it's gonna have a lot of the same places. No, I have
negative.
I have never heard that opinion, to be honest with you, and I think that is crap.
The typical detracting opinions that I see is the wolf. So people don't like to be the wolf, and the tier collecting as the wolf. And that's what's funny, is that's kind of a detriment to a first time experience. But when you understand the landscape, and also you've done it before, those sections breeze right by. You can get them done in less than 5 minutes when you're competent at it. But like when you're doing it for the first time and everything turns to a poo brown and you don't know what's going on.
You're like, where's my sword?
Yeah, it's like, oh man, I just want to be like hitting like bokoblins with my sword right now. Like what is going on here? But honestly, like on replays, it's so much more tolerable. And you also just like, there's the Wii U version where it's so easy to transform into a wolf now. It's like just a press of a button. Oh. So a lot of things kind of got adjusted and fixed, and also just experience just makes it not that bad. So one of the other big complaints though is that it has a very long introduction, I guess. And there's no way around that. Literally, my advice though to anybody that feels that as a complaint, copy a save file just after the intro into the second slot. You can't have 3 save files that are being used up by family members. There's no way. So just do that, and anytime you ever want to go back to the game, you just boot up the copy file. So You could do that, but for me, I don't really have a huge complaint with that. It's just part of the narrative, and if I'm going to replay any 3D Zelda game, part of that experience is to get immersed in the story. So I'm not gonna sit here and complain about Link talking about it. What is it, Ilida, or how do you pronounce it? Do you remember?
Mm-mm.
No.
Wait, what are you trying to pronounce?
The horse girl.
Yeah, the horse girl. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember.
It's just funny referring to her as horse girl. Yeah, but all right. But anyway, so there's that. Okay. And I don't mean to command the whole conversation here, but Twilight Princess is definitely one of the highlight games for me. So I have a lot to say about it. But
yeah.
So those are like the big things.
Ilya,
thank you.
I put in Twilight Princess horse girl into Google search.
Well, so
This
anyways,
game has a crazy character design. They really did a lot of unique characters.
Oh yeah, they went hog wild with the NPCs.
Yeah,
they were just like, let's make them look crazy. It's like a guy with a gargantuan forehead. Well, Wind Waker has one of those too. Actually, now I think about it, it's the old man, with the stick. It's the older brother. He had a bulbous head as well. But anyways, yeah, I think the things I love most about Twilight Princess is they had much better set pieces than any other Zelda game, in my opinion, like any other Zelda game. So like what I'm referring to is like the part where you have to rescue Colin from what is it? I'm trying to remember. They're not Moblins. What are they? Bokoblins? Bokoblin King? Is that what he is? The Bokoblin King?
Like yeah.
So like riding on horseback to rescue Colin from the Bokoblin King, going to the hidden village and sniping out all the Bokoblins with your arrows and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of like one more good key scene, but it's just stuff like that. Well, again, I guess like memorable moments such as
like Midna, everything with Midna.
Yeah.
Midna's awesome.
Yeah, I think she's a great sidekick character. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot that I like to Twilight Princess, and again, it doesn't just go from just like the aesthetic, because the aesthetic is probably the weaker part for me. I don't particularly like the Shadow or Twilight Realm folk and all that stuff, but it's just part of the story. But I love the dungeon designs. I love a lot of the character designs that are in the overworld area, like the main area. Again, I like Gerudo Desert. I like that whole entire part of the game,
Yeah,
like getting to the temple
shot
and everything
through the cannon, right? And don't know how you get over to the desert.
Oh yeah, with the guy that just looks like he's just a washed up dude, but he's wearing clown makeup.
Yep.
That's good stuff. I love it. Yeah.
And like the little baby that starts to run a shop.
Oh, Mallow, yeah, with the Mallow Mart, and they start dancing when he gets and you give him his full shop. It's amazing. He has a little Mallow Mart theme. Yeah. Yeah.
Now my least I didn't mind the wolf part because, like you said, they don't last that long. They're pretty quick. I do remember from my most recent playthrough of it the sewer as the wolf, though. That went on too long. I was ready to be out of the sewers.
Absolutely. But one of the cool things about that was just finally getting to the end of that segment, going up the tower, and then finally meeting Princess Zelda for the first time.
Yeah.
It was a good feeling.
It had a good payoff for sure.
Yeah.
Man. So my most recent Twilight Princess, I aside from not getting on the Nintendo train until way too late, I also am not big into consoles, so I didn't have a Wii. I didn't have GameCube. Was the last console I got really until a Switch a couple of years ago. So how I recently had a Wind Waker and Twilight Princess playthrough was me just kind of messing around with emulators on and getting it to play through my Steam Link on a Steam controller. So I was playing Twilight Princess with a Steam controller emulating through Steam, and that having a Steam controller was really, really nice. I don't know if you use one, but the customization that you can do is just nuts.
Okay, so were you playing the Wii version or the GameCube version?
I am not sure. It was through the Dolphin emulator.
So that doesn't answer the question.
Dang it. Okay, I was hoping it would. I am pretty sure that I intentionally grabbed the GameCube version because I didn't want to worry about motion
controls.
Yeah. So
it must have been the GameCube one. Was Link right-handed or left-handed?
I think he was right-handed.
Yeah. Right-handed is the Wii, actually.
Yeah. I can't remember. I can't remember.
I mean, this is kind of a fact that everyone knows at this point, but they instead of just making Link right-handed in the game, they flipped the entire map. So it would make Link right-handed instead of just making him right-handed. It's weird.
That is, I do remember hearing that. Because they did it to the Wii because most people are right-handed, so they wanted to give it a more common experience. It had to have been the GameCube version, like I said, because I didn't want to deal with motion controls at all. So I'm sure I had the GameCube version.
Yeah, because if you used the Wii version on a controller, it would be impossible.
Right. So I am sure.
Unless they mapped a button to waggle. Press A to waggle.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
You can do that.
I don't think I did though. I think it was GameCube. But yeah, that was a really fun experience with Twilight Princess, and like I said, Wind Waker as well. Playing through that on using the Steam Link.
Speaking of waggle,
okay, here we go.
How do you feel about Skyward Sword?
It's my least favorite.
If I had to pop another one of those guys' toes, I was not going to finish the game. Worst boss fight ever.
Too bad you had to do it 3 times.
I know.
Imagine having that opinion where it's like, that boss fight was awful, and then all of a sudden here it is again. It's like, really?
I can't believe you're doing this. And then
third time.
Yeah.
So Skyward Sword, I think is terrible as far as a mainline Zelda game. Now that there's handheld ones, there's obviously the Philips CDI ones that are obviously worse, but I don't consider those mainline games.
Right.
So
Skyward Sword was an entry in the franchise, that's the way I feel, and it didn't deserve to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I can go off if you want. I hated the reuses of bosses. That was really cheap and lame. The first dungeon boss was the Scorpion, only to be reintroduced as a mini boss later on. The Imprison that you were just talking about gets reused 3 times. Again, the world doesn't feel interconnected because you have to drop down into specific zones. They reuse those zones twice each. It's so lazy. That's the thing I hate most about it. And then the waggle controls are just so obnoxious and they don't work all the time. So I found out much later in the game that you can control the sword very well if you do very gentle strokes. But why would I want to use the sword like that if the whole idea of using the sword with the motion control is to be immersed in the experience, right?
Yeah, I want to swing it wildly.
Exactly. That's what I would do, and that's what I was trying to do, and it would cause misfires in the inputs. So it was so frustrating because I was like, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. And then when I was told how to actually do it, I was like, well, now I feel like I'm just waving a paintbrush, So I. Not a fan of and I also that's when the story got super anime influence. It just did not feel like a separation between anime and video game. It felt like it straight up was out of an anime. I'm not personally a fan of anime. I know a lot of people are. I know that usually when you like video games, you like anime as well. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's like I'm not a big fan of watching anime, and so to have it like so blatant, you know, with Groose and everything, where he's just like the slapstick, like doofus, you know, displaying anime tropes that we've seen in other shows and stuff like that. I was like, oh god, there's nothing here for me, not a single thing.
I will say, when I did first boot up Skyward Sword for the first time, it was the first one that I had played with Wii Motion Plus, and being able to slowly like rotate the sword and it moving this 1-to-1 motion, that was cool. That, you know, happened right away. I played around with that a lot, and then everything was downhill from there.
You know, that's like the same experience I had. Yeah, I was like, oh my god,
yeah, like this is going to be so amazing. But
am I the only person who seems to have liked Skyward Sword?
That's on this. Well, Joey hasn't given his opinion yet, so maybe it's half and half. But
well, I haven't replayed it. If that tells you anything, mainly because you've been borrowing my Wii for a really long time. And when I got it back, I kind of wanted to play the game, and then they announced the remaster. And I was like, I guess I should wait.
I did have his Wii for 8 years or longer.
Yeah, long time. It's okay. You had a kid. It introduced him to video games.
That's true.
In some ways, so that's good. But
they did do a lot of good changes, but still not enough for me to want to go back to it. So
yeah, like when I actually think about going back to Skyward Sword, I'm thinking, okay, I like the art style. It's very colorful.
Okay.
I like the characters. It's kind of my favorite Zelda. Up until it's like at that time, it was not my favorite Zelda. I thought the relationship between her and Link was really cute.
Okay.
And I liked. I remember liking the dungeons. The bosses were kind of neat when they weren't rehashes. Like I like that desert level on the ship. That one was really good.
Yeah,
where you're literally going in between different time zones in the time that moves with you.
And then I'm thinking about playing Skyward Sword, and how every time you pick up a bug, it has to say, "Hey, bro, this is a bug." Put it in your journal.
I hope they fix that. I can't imagine they'll leave that in for the.
Like here's a journal. In Phi going, hey, the battery's low. Beep 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 beep. I was like, okay, I get it. Like you said, like other repetitive in between sections, which I don't really remember. Like I kind of liked how getting into the dungeon was almost a dungeon in itself. It was just outside. Like the lack of overworld didn't really bother me too much. So I think I will check out the remaster.
Yeah.
But because I haven't played it in so long. But I just remember one thing with the motion control. There was this one dungeon where you had to like poke a fruit that was like on a vine and attach it to your sword or something like that. And I just couldn't for the life of me say, look, how do I get this fruit? I can't pick it up because it falls to the ground when it drops, and then just randomly I poked it. It's like, oh, okay. You got a fruit.
Yeah, you got a fruit. Okay. So there's a couple things. One, I like that they got rid of. So there's a filter in the original Skyward Sword that's actually not going to be in this re-release. Thank God. And the idea was that only a couple feet away from your distance, Nintendo put like this like color swash effect to make the environment look like it was a watercolor painting. It was a cool idea and concept, but in practice, it just makes it look more low res than it actually is. So they're removing that in the remaster, which I'm really glad to see, because I think when you see it in HD, like if you play it off of a Dolphin emulator, you realize it's like, oh my God, that thing's an eyesore. I just never realized that that's what they were going for. Because
I wouldn't be surprised if someone put a code in, put in a patch to be like, nope, that's got to go.
Yeah. Oh no, I had to find one for my show, so I know it exists. But yeah, Nintendo also probably did the same thing. Another thing that I also wanted to mention, I really don't like Fee at all in any regard. I don't like the idea that now it's canon that the Master Sword is a robot lady. It's a very weird thing to think about. So it's like in A Link to the Past, you're going in the woods, you pick up the sword, and truthfully, in that moment, you're picking up a robot lady. She's just not talking in that one.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just weird for me to think about. But yeah, no, outside of that, other thing, well, let me talk, some things I liked. I liked that giant gold thing that you could pick up the sword and destroy his own pieces with. That boss.
Oh yeah,
Boss,
yeah.
that was
Yep.
With the little baby cackle at the end, which was so weird. But I also liked the very Kid Icarus-esque looking boss, where I think the name of the boss was Morpha, and it was the giant tentacle one-eyed monster on the boat. That was a cool looking boss, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it was like the Medusa looking thing.
Yeah, it very much reminded me of like old '80s Medusa, and I was like,
It kind of looks out of place, to be honest, in that game.
I suppose you're right. Yeah, but I was just so whimsied by the fact that it reminded me of a franchise I like a lot. So I guess I kind of gave it a pass without putting much thought into it. But I think
liked
you're
it.
right.
I like the where you had a boss battle mode. I always like that, where you could just boss rush through all the ball. That was always kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool. Yeah.
What wasn't cool was the fact that the best prize in the boss rush, you had to stop before you got to the end. The Hylian shield was like 2 or 3 notches down below. And if you went on to like the full end, I think it was like a piece of heart the first time, then like rupees after that.
Oh wow, I didn't know
that. You mentioned like Skyward Sword being kind of repetitive, like reusing bosses and areas, and I wouldn't be surprised if they spent a lot of time in development, getting the motion controls the way they wanted, and they didn't have as much time to maybe they had to cut a couple bosses or a couple levels, and they couldn't do an overworld because of that. It wouldn't surprise me.
I always had this theory that basically like it was like a prototype for Breath of the Wild, and they were always working in the background for Breath of the Wild because that engine, that everything to that game is so vastly different from what they were normally doing that I feel like it's almost like, all right, we're taking concepts that we're going to be putting into our game later. Let's just put out something a little faster, a little easier to kind of satiate the fan base for now. And that's what Skyward Sword became, because there's just a lot of cut corners. And yeah, you might be right. It might just be fussing with the motion controls to such a degree that it really held back the development. You might be right. But there's also just a lot of concepts in Skyward Sword that made its way into Breath of the Wild later that just feels a little out of place in this traditional Zelda game, like the stamina. Yeah. And it's just I'm like, all right, there's just a lot of weird mishmash stuff and a lot of cut corners and everything, and I just can't help but wonder if it was like almost like a rushed together project just to kind of have something.
Because I hated the shields breaking in Skyward Sword. I was like, why is this here?
Yeah,
like, because I can't block. It's like, is that what you're saying? I can't do game. It's like. It's something like you block like 5 times, and your one shield is gone. It's like, at least in like Breath of the Wild, you have like a dozen shields, so it doesn't matter if one breaks.
Yeah,
only a dozen. No.
I love that new race with the mole people.
Oh, yeah,
those guys were cool. Whatever they were called, I forget.
Just don't talk to the Goron at that one point in the game, or else your save will be corrupted.
Yeah,
they all have that one thing, don't they? Because Twilight Princess, it was like if you save in the cannon room when they need to retrieve this ancient cannon that you use to get to the Sky Temple. If you saved in that room, it would just corrupt your file, basically.
And you had to sit like send your Wii in. Or something like that.
It's like every single game had one of those just somewhere.
That would talk about Breath of the Wild then.
Oh, why don't we talk about some of the handheld games first?
What is it? Handheld? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Again, just a reminder.
I don't have much to say about.
Well, I've always been intrigued by Spirit Tracks and Minish Cap. I've always been intrigued by that because trains are awesome for one.
The
music for Spirit Tracks is it's one of the best tracks in the game, no pun intended.
No, you're not wrong. Like all of the handheld games all had this interesting gimmick to them all that really, like the Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons had that they were interconnected. You know, you played one, then you put in this long, complicated password, and then you played the other one, and like stuff carried over.
That's cool.
And like
you got to face against Ganon.
You actually had a little extra bonus at the end.
Yeah, you got to fight Ganon.
Yeah.
So which was the best handheld?
In my opinion, Link's Awakening.
Okay.
I would argue that it's either going to be Link's Awakening or Minish Cap.
Okay. Yeah, Minish Cap has like its own small fan base. It's interesting. I personally didn't like it too much. It's not that I hated it, like the discussion we just had about Skyward Sword, but it didn't leave a lasting impact on me. And there was this one dungeon that really tripped me up, and so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the heck I did wrong. And so I just didn't have an amazing experience with it, but it was okay.
Yeah, but absolutely, a lot of people tend to skip over the handheld ones, but absolutely, people need to play at least one of the Oracle of Ages games, games, one of the Minish Cap. Absolutely.
To me, it's
Spirit Tracks.
You say Spirit Tracks? I would say what was it called? A Link Between Worlds.
And Link Between Worlds, definitely. Link Between Worlds is probably, if it's not going to be, I mean, it's like trying to pick your favorite child at this point.
Yeah,
the handheld ones, because Link's Awakening, Minish Cap, and A Link Between Worlds are just good, solid Zelda games. That they stand there with the console ones, in my opinion.
So what's the gimmick in A Link Between Worlds?
You can basically turn into a mural, and what it allows you to do is just kind of like walk along the walls. You become part of the wall. You become wall art, and you can walk along the walls, and it allows you to slip in between realms, in between worlds.
Okay.
You
go from Hyrule to Lowrule.
Yeah, and in Lowrule, there's like I think they call it nega verses, like negative verses.
Gotcha.
Of like Zelda and Link and stuff like that. It's cool. Princess Hilda is the princess of that kingdom. And yeah, I thought that was really cool. And I also appreciated that they brought back classic Ganon for the first time in many, many years. So although he only had a literal 10-second appearance before being turned into a Yuga clone, like a Yuga version of him, it was still nice to see the blue wizard Ganon again after so many years.
But it's definitely it's probably I mean, if we look at the other 3DS ones, it's what, Link Between Worlds, 2 remakes, and then whatever the heck Triforce Heroes was.
Yeah, I didn't even pick it up. I was like, that doesn't look like it's for me. I'm sorry.
It's a it's a multiplayer focused Zelda.
Do you guys want to talk about?
Now, I played Hyrule Heroes. I played Hyrule Heroes on Wii U.
Oh, Hyrule! Oh, we forgot to talk about Hyrule Warriors.
Hyrule Warriors, that's what I meant. Hyrule Warriors, and that was a good time as long as you had a friend. And that's my statement. As long as you had a friend to play with you in the same house, it was a great time.
I mean, if you like fighting tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of enemies.
Well, and all of the cool. Now, granted, this was I didn't play Dynasty Warriors. This was the first Warriors game I'd ever played. And so a lot of the praise that I have is probably not Hyrule Warriors specific, but just all of the combos you could learn with all of the people and all of the cool stuff that you could do in those combos. Man,
it's just like a love letter to the series with all the characters and references, stuff like that. Did you play the new one that came out?
Nope.
On the Switch?
I did not.
Because that's a direct Breath of the Wild prequel game.
Okay.
I mean, it's like takes place during that war.
Mm-hmm.
It took place 100 years ago in that game. It's like what happened and all that.
Gotcha. No, I have not played that.
Okay. Yeah. Can we talk about spoilers with that game, or?
I don't think any of us has played
audience.
So
no, please don't.
Okay, I won't.
Justin's like, no, dear God. Do you want to talk at all about the timeline? Or
oh.
It's a
I think it sounds pretty unanimous with all the grunts.
Can we say we did and don't? Because, I mean, even Nintendo themselves at this point have just thrown up their hands and given up.
They just don't even try.
Because you can kind of, up to Wind Waker and kind of Twilight Princess, you can kind of, it's pretty easy to figure out. But then you just gotta say, you know what? They're gonna reference Ocarina of Time a lot.
Yeah.
And like they're just gonna do their own thing. And maybe it alludes to some other parts of the lore. But like you really shouldn't try to connect these games as one big story unless it's a direct sequel to one of them, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
It was fun to think about for a time, but like it's such a headache to try to piece them together. And it's exactly what you just said. It's like, in truth, when you really kind of break it down, it's just Nintendo wanting to do whatever they want to do, and they're just going to drop in a couple of little references here and there. And I doubt that.
I mean, when they made that Hyrule Historia, they had to make up a timeline just so they could have a place to put some of the games.
Right.
I mean,
and they had to split the timeline into 3 parts.
Yeah. And
then apparently sometime between, and now they've recombined them all again with Breath of the Wild. So
yeah, I do like how when the official timeline was released, that 1986 Legend of Zelda was so far at the end of it. That was fun.
It was a really cool idea. Yeah, I love the idea that it's like it's a desolate, conquered Hyrule.
Yeah,
and again, Breath of the Wild took a lot from it, but I don't know. I still like the original one just slightly more for various little reasons.
Yeah,
but can we talk about Breath of the Wild? Or I think we've been leading up to that.
I feel like we have as well. I'm ready to dive in.
Like I lost myself in Breath of the Wild. There's a period of time there that all I was doing was playing Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Like finding all the shrines, finding a good chunk of the Koroks, not all of them, because I'm not that insane.
Yeah. Yeah, Santa brought us a Switch for 2 Christmases ago, and then my kids during their Christmas vacation went and spent a week with the grandparents, and all I did was play Breath of the Wild just the whole time, and it was a really awesome reintroduction to Zelda after I hadn't played a Zelda in a year or so, and I really loved that game.
It's not your favorite though, right?
I don't. When I was saying earlier, it depends on the day of the week. It is up there, one of them, but I still think Wind Waker's my favorite. But they just did so many good things, in my opinion, with Breath of the Wild. and just people were. I was nervous about open world with Zelda. I mean, I don't know if that's gonna really work, but it definitely did. I think.
Yeah.
And I think just so smart changing there's no real dungeons per se, but you've got 120 shrines to look through. They're kind of like mini dungeons.
Well, there are dungeons.
Well, I mean, yeah, but
yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Brice. It's like they're not the traditional.
Yeah, it's
Zelda
not level
dungeons.
1, level 2, level the water temple, stuff like that. But
right, they barely resemble what they used to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love Breath of the Wild. It was a breath of fresh air, pun intended that time. But like I definitely think there's a lot that can be pulled back to classic 3D Zelda while still maintaining the open world aspect. So there are things that I would like to see with this Breath of the Wild 2. I would like to see traditional dungeons come back, but still have that concept that was in Breath of the Wild where you can tackle them in any order. Maybe you can stumble upon one by accident. That'd be cool. But I would love to be able to go into a dungeon, find an item that becomes useful, practical in the overworld and stuff like that. I'd love to see that come back. I'm okay with what do they call them? It's like not tomes,
runes.
Yeah, I'm okay with runes coming back. But it would be nice to also see traditional collectible items stacked on top of that as well. That maybe they're not as important in. Like I'm not gonna visit a shrine that suddenly needs a boomerang that I don't have. Yeah. But like it would be cool to see some traditional items come back, dungeons, and as experimental and maybe fitting as well as the soundtrack was for Breath of the Wild. I would like to see some more melodically driven tracks come back for the sequel. Stuff that you see in like Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. Like I can hum stuff from those games. I love the music from those games. But Breath of the Wild, as well as good as it is presentation wise, I can't hum a single song for the life of me. And I'm getting 180 hours into that game.
Yeah.
You don't remember dink 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 dink.
That's about it.
Oh man.
No, the music was more atmospheric.
Yes, yeah, and that's okay. But like, I also would love for more melodically driven tracks to be sprinkled in. Obviously, I don't want them playing at every. What's up?
Oh, go ahead. Can you finish?
I was just gonna say. I mean, obviously, I don't expect it to play at all hours of the day when you're outside of a town or a dungeon. That would just get obnoxious. But it would be cool if it got sprinkled in here and there. Maybe key moments and stuff. Maybe not even key moments. Maybe just every once in a while you perform a certain action on the overworld theme, and it allows the music to be a little bit more interesting. There should be multiple battle themes too. I don't like that one where it just sounds like some dude's turning off and on and off a walkie-talkie. I'm sure I'm the only one that thinks that, but there's just like whenever you get in a battle on the overworld theme, it's like and it's like
So you talking about like in the when you're fighting one of the giant robots?
No, that one goes
actually supposedly that music is happening like you're hearing that in game because that's the robot talking.
That's interesting.
The robot has its own Doof Warrior playing.
He's just saying, "Please don't kill me."
Battle theme.
It plays its own battle theme.
And you know what she says? It does sound like you can hum at least a few themes from it.
That's the best I could do, though. Like I played by cards. You could not play you a single note higher, like further into any of those. But
I mean, like one of the tracks in Smash Brothers in Ultimate is like, I mean, they have some arrangements of some music in there, but one of them is just like Breath of the Wild E3 presentation trailer music.
Because that song was so good, and I was like, "Why isn't this in the game?" I was so shocked. I was like, that was the one thing that, like, that trailer. You go back and watch that trailer, you will still be blown away to this very day. But like, you play the game, and it's like I said, okay, so the trailer music, right? It's just like ba 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 ba. You know, it's like, oh my god, so epic.
Yeah.
And then you play the game, it's like. It's like what?
So I've talked to Dustin and Brice about this. Is how Breath of the Wild never really clicked with me in a lot of ways. It was too different. Like, I liked a lot about it. Like, the open world was cool and all that. And I liked the shrines. But, like, it didn't feel Zelda enough to me. I felt stressed out when weapons broke. And shields broke. And, like, cooking and upgrading was, like, a process that you kind of had to go out of your way to do. I realized at a point, it's like, wait a minute, I have 0 rupees. I can't buy anything. How do you make money in this game?
Yeah.
And like, had to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
So I never beat it, which may be a little bit blasphemous. I played about 30 or 40 hours of it. But I'm willing to give Breath of the Wild 2 a good chance, because I'm hoping that they do what Shesez said, that they kind of mix the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. Like, they keep the best parts of Breath of the Wild and make it a more traditional Zelda-ish, where I don't feel overwhelmed of this humongous game bearing down on me at all times.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, it's funny, too, because you mentioned the weapons breaking, which I completely blanked on. I can't believe that. But
how could you blank on that? That's the most annoying thing.
I know. But like, now that you brought it up, it's funny because the game is so strict on those rules. Even when you get the Master Sword, it has to recharge.
Yep.
And I always found that to be a little silly, because it's not an MMO. It's a single player experience. So it's weird to me that you can't get to a point in the game where you do have a sword that just doesn't break or has anything go wrong with it.
Right.
You know, it's like at a certain point you get so far into the game, that you should have equipment that doesn't break anymore.
The Master Sword is a robot, so it needs to recharge itself.
And you still can't use it at full power unless you're in a dungeon or fighting a guardian or something.
The Master Sword is USB-C.
It's solar powered.
Man, yeah, I totally agree. Like, I get, okay, I picked up a stick. A stick can break. I buy that. That's fine. But then the Master Sword, the legendary Sword of Evil's Bane, well, it gets tired.
It needs a nap.
And, Master, I need to go lie down. I have a headache.
Maybe I never found it, but you couldn't repair anything. I know the named weapons you could go get more of, or I think they called it repairing, but you couldn't repair normal things. Is that right?
Yeah. So there was like very few weapons. There was like this one where it's like, hey, you have this amazing trident.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to repair it? All right, you need these incredibly rare materials, and you need to dump a whole bunch of. It's like, wow. So you're
diamonds,
you are deterring the crap out of me from repairing this one item. I got you.
And the moon scimitar from the Gerudo, and then there was one other name. There was probably 4 named ones, because one for each.
Champions.
Yeah, exactly. But I totally blanked out on the materials that they asked for.
Diamond.
Yeah, you had to have so many things.
And again, the rules were just too strict. It's like they had a really cool idea, but they were a little too heavy-handed on it. And upon playing the game, it's like I understand what they were going for. It's kind of fun, but like at the same time too, you could have just allowed us to go back to town to repair things, because that still kind of puts us in a detriment when we're trying to get like up to Death Mountain. It's like you're using all the equipment that you have, and you start to get to the point where you're almost going to break one of your swords or whatever, and you can't use them. If you want to use it later, you have to put it away and use a different weapon, thus allowing the game to use the mechanics that it had intended. But then you could go back to town and repair it, but that's not an option, which is so bizarre. But it was them just being that strict about the idea of constantly using resources, picking up things around you. And we got Joey over here that's like, it just stresses me out and I don't like it. And it's like with me, I didn't love it either. It was like, okay, I'm doing this because this is what's expected of me. But man, I can't wait to get that master sword. Surely
it needed a mechanic.
I also never owned it. I was borrowing it from like Dustin's nephew or something.
Niece.
So like I
so your kid Joey? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
So like I never owned it. I like just didn't have time to beat it really. But there did come a certain point where it was like, I'm enjoying this. Oh, this was where it really happened. I got into Darksiders around the same time. And Darksiders was the Zelda game that I was missing for all these years. Darksiders 1 and 2. And,
maybe not Darksiders 3.
Well, that's not really a Zelda game. But, like Darksiders 2 just kind of took over my life around the same time. I was like, this is what I'm missing from Zelda, like dungeons and exploring and heart pieces and all this stuff. And
I had the exact opposite experience. Is that I kind of got a partial way into Darksiders 2 and just kind of stopped playing.
I never played Darksiders 1 or 2.
Very good games if you want a more action-oriented type experience.
Okay.
So, especially 2, in my opinion. So I'm hoping Breath of the Wild 2 kind of mixes the two styles together. We still don't know much about it. All they announce is that they're making it, and Zelda has short hair now.
That's how you build up hype, baby.
Yeah.
Get that short hair Zelda.
Some people think they gave her short hair so they can animate her better
for combat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised because when Breath of the Wild was in development, the developers were doing interviews and stuff like that, and I think that was a pretty common question that kept popping up, and so they probably took in that feedback. There was interviews where they were like, "Oh, is Zelda playable in this one?" And they were like, "No." I'm like, "Why not?"
That would be
It's
awesome.
Yeah. Just as long as we don't get to the point where it's like, "Oh, Link can be anybody you want him to be," that would just. I'm like, "Oh no, please don't make him full Abby. I don't want to."
But like this is the most like progressive, or like not progressive, but like this version of Zelda just isn't like I'm a princess. Ooh. Like she's like a scientist. She's like her own person.
What's funny is that your impression of her was very spot on, though. You can't deny the fact that's actually how she sounds in the game.
That's true.
Link, you have to go to the thing and don't follow me around.
I'm not worth it, Link. But
the voice acting was weird in that game too. I'm sorry.
I don't know if like you should choose to be Link or Zelda, or you switch between them, or how that would work.
Ooh. I'd like it if it was story-wise, you had to switch between the two.
That's what I was thinking it would be, is that, at some points you take over as Zelda and you do something as her, and then back to Link.
But I'd get behind that.
So you think it's just be a temporary thing?
Yeah, that's what I would expect, is maybe even like you play there's flashbacks or something, whereas you play as Zelda.
Oh my god.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they pull a Metal Gear Solid 2 and like Link is the one being kidnapped this time and you play as Zelda throughout the entire game. Like that would be
as long as there isn't a scene where she goes nude and then gets a codec call from the colonel about Scissors 67 or whatever. I'd be down for that.
No.
But that sounds good. I'd be down for that. I was gonna say, I mean, not necessarily the switcheroo. I don't like the idea of that, but
not like a trick or something, but like, what if Zelda was the character you played as?
The protagonist,
and then Link.
I mean, that's what they did with the CDI games.
We don't talk about that.
Link becomes like basically the princess role, and he even has the same voice. Zelda, you must come to the kingdom. It's like, oh, this is why Link never talks. Okay. But no, I
mean, like, I say that I want Breath of the Wild 2 to like have like the 8 dungeon like thing going on or stuff, but
yeah.
I do like how when you get out of that plateau, the first thing you see is like main mission, defeat Ganon. There's the castle right there.
That is kind of quirky and fun. Yeah, I love that. Was really fun.
Yeah. I loved that. Yeah.
I mean, go for it if you think you're hard enough.
Yeah, it's right there, dude. And you only have one quest on your map right now, and it's that.
That was a very solid concept. I did like that a lot, where you could just storm the castle and just go straight for it. But like, it's just the odds are completely stacked against. Yeah, that's what speedruns are all about.
Yeah, flying on boulders.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a ridiculous looking speedrun, but it's insane. But I appreciate it. What was I gonna? Oh, shoot, there was something I was gonna say about the fact that like Switch. Oh, that's right. It's been right in front of us this whole time, guys. It's like Nintendo's like, oh, in this one you can turn into a wolf, and in this one you can turn into a Deku or Deku Scrub, and it's like, but this whole time it could have been like, in this one you can switch between Link and Zelda. People would have loved that.
That's
like maybe Zelda is better at like arrows and things like that.
Like she could be magic based,
Yeah.
Man.
I love it.
It's weird how it's like, here we are having this conversation, but it's never been mulled around by Nintendo all these years.
I mean, like way back in the day, I had the idea. It's like, what if you could have a Zelda game where you switch, like using the power of the Triforce, you switch between Zelda, Link, and Ganondorf, and they would each have their own, almost like Donkey Kong 64 style or something, and they each had their own like strengths and weaknesses.
Oh heck yeah!
Ganon can do heavy things.
Yeah, Ganon can have the coconut gun.
Bursts. Well, things like that. Like a Ganondorf would be really strong, have a lot of slow melee. Zelda would be the magic user. Maybe she can or maybe she turn into Sheik or something and stuff like that.
I would say, that'd be nice, but
that would be cool.
Until then, I think the closest thing we have to that is like Cadence of Hyrule.
And that's not a bad one. I liked Cadence of Hyrule.
Oh yeah, as someone who came from being just an absolute fanboy of Crypt of the Necrodancer, and then hear, oh hey, you like Crypt of the Necrodancer? Oh, do you like Legend of Zelda too? Well, yes, sir, I do. How about we put these two things together for you? I'm like, why, yes, I would very much like that. Okay, here you go.
Yeah, I had never played Crypt of the Necrodancer, so the whole concept was new to me. And I will say, one of the first things I learned was how to turn it off of real time, because it was way too hard. I was not good at it.
Yeah, that's how I haven't played a lot of it, but that's how I ended up playing it.
Yeah,
and it's not a illegitimate way to play it, because it almost turns into
a strategy game. Yeah, turn-based strategy.
Yeah. I love playing Crypt of the Necrodancer, so putting it on real mode is just all about it for me.
Yeah, I bet.
Who's the composer for that one? Who did the music?
Danny B.
Oh yeah, Danny B.
It was Danny B.
I
like Danny B. Also, I had Family Jewels.
Oh yeah, a lot of people did. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of people. But yeah, it was Adriosaurus. I probably said that wrong.
Oh, they also did like a DLC pack for that, where you play as like a Skull Kid and stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, Zelda
Definitely
had quite a history.
Zelda. I mean, it had its ups and it had its downs, but we don't talk about the downs.
So it's a safe bet to make that Nintendo's going to do some sort of 35th anniversary celebration this year. I say just
Easy.
because they did one with Mario. I know they released the Skyward Sword a little later, but like, what would you want if they made like a 35th edition collection pack? Like, what would you want that to be?
Everything.
Everything.
I honestly, here's the thing. I would love to see a remake of Zelda 2.
I could leave that one alone.
No,
well, that's the thing, right?
No,
so you probably don't like it, but what if they made it into a remake that you enjoy? You know,
that's what I'm saying.
I would enjoy it.
I love
I'm
out of
saying.
all the story concepts, Zelda 2's is my favorite.
Okay.
Basically, Link finds out that there's a true Zelda north of the Hyrule that he just rescued. So he goes there, and the original Zelda is under a sleep spell, all the while trying to wake up this Zelda. Ganon's minions are trying to get Link's blood to resurrect Ganon. That's the story, is that they want Link's blood.
Sorry, Zelda. There's a hotter Zelda over here.
What if I told you there was two Zeldas?
I'm listening.
Interesting. Well, the prophecy says I can be with Zelda. It doesn't say I can't be with two Zeldas.
I would love for them to bring over Wind Waker and Twilight Princess to Switch, but I think it would be cool if they kind of do HD versions of those 3DS Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Like not a
Switch port those. Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would be a great idea. So, I think like here's my pie in the sky. I'm not thinking realistically here. It would be cool if they did a Zelda 1 pure remake, but with the Breath of the Wild engine. But they use like the art style from the Famicom and stuff like that. I know that seems kind of redundant, but at the same time too, you get your dungeons, you get some cool style. And what else? I think, yeah, I mean, like I wouldn't mind an Unreal Engine 4 remake of Ocarina of Time. That'd be cool.
Oh yeah, like super high fidelity, no problem.
Yeah.
Well, but I suspect for the 35th anniversary, we're just gonna get like a collection that has like a bunch of the games.
So I would like to see a handheld collections and not dole them out one at a time for $60 each. That's what I would, because that's my gap in my Zelda gameplay, and I want to get that. I want to get at least some of that taken care of, and not without emulating.
An Oracle of Ages Seasons collection would be interesting.
Something, just 4 or 5 handhelds, and I mean, maybe don't even do anything fancy, just almost a straight port,
Yeah. Sure, I mean, it's crazy to me that we've had the online, like the Switch online system for 2 years now, and they don't have Game Boy and N64 games on there.
They barely support their NES and Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe that's like if we had a Game Boy and N64 thing, like I would just want to have those on there. So that's almost as if I think like, I mean, you can play like Zelda 1 and 2 and Link Past. That's why I think that like the 3D like the HD remakes of the 3DS games might be cool. Even like Link Between Worlds would be a pretty cool collection.
Yeah, because they're really low res on those screens. It would be really nice to be able to get like a clean port.
And 3DS stuff upscales really well. If you use, alternate means.
And I've seen it, and yes, it is. They make them look very beautiful. Honestly, you wouldn't have to do much.
And since like no one bought a Wii U, like getting those remasters of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess would be awesome too.
Yeah.
I mean, we have everything else at this point. Why not, right?
Like that, along with like a Xenoblade X, like that's kind of the last few games on that system.
Yeah,
that need to be remade. Yeah. All right.
I have one other thing I want to touch on.
Oh sure.
Has anyone ever watched any of the Legend of Zelda Randomizer speedrun events? Has anyone ever heard of that?
Like the whole scene of the Legend of Zelda Randomizers?
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Is that Joey and Shesez, are you guys familiar with that?
I've heard of them. I've never experienced a randomizer.
Okay, so you know the concept. You get the concept.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like you can choose what to modify. Like you can get the items to be in separate places. You can get the dungeons to have different rooms and stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, for sure.
Then there's the crazy stuff where you start crossing it over for like other games.
Yeah, that's where I actually wrote a note here with so one of the most fun ones I saw was a Super Nintendo, Super Metroid, and Link to the Past randomizer. So you might have to, there's certain points in the game where you teleport between Metroid or Zelda, and you may, as Metroid, open up a Chozu and find the hook shot. And then as Link, you might open up a treasure chest and there's your the bomb or the ball mode.
Wow.
And you have to play through both games side by side.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
It is as awesome as it sounds.
I mean, that's literally playing through the beginning of the Super NES to the end of the Super NES.
Now, like, do they have to make sure the game's beatable, or some of these like, I can't get the hook shot?
Like, there's a lot of sanity checking going on.
Yeah, and it's all done it's obviously emulated, done by ROM hacks and mods or whatever. But yeah, it is beatable. It's always beatable. But what I really like is the tournament modes of just where they have two people playing side by side and racing to the end with the randomizer. You might find your silver arrows in the first wooden sword room. You might.
So like that, you might have to have to do part of a dungeon, then move over to a completely different dungeon that's at the end of the game.
Exactly.
The first dungeon. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's how I've seen that happen. I mean, anything can happen. You could literally find all of the right items in the first dungeon and go beat the end of the game.
Yeah, because you don't need every item.
It would be funny first time you play a randomizer that you get the 1 in a billion chance where it's exactly like the original game. And you go, this isn't any different.
It's definitely a possibility.
No, everything's the same except 2 chests are different. It's okay.
Oh yeah, just the proof that you need that the randomizer worked.
Yeah. The chest that's normally a 5 rupee is a 1 rupee. That's the difference. That's the randomization on that one.
And you can say, "Hey, I beat the randomizer! Yay!"
Are things like bosses randomized, so you might get Ganon in the first dungeon or stuff like that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's that. I mean, you probably can. It's probably a setting in there, but in all the ones I've watched that are these tournament styles, no, it's really item locations. But so all of the spaces items will be are the same, but it's just what is there.
Yeah. So
an
item will be in a random chest in Hyrule. It'll always be in the dungeon where usually.
No, not necessarily. So here's a really good example. So on the far right side on Legend of Zelda, where there is a heart container that you need to have the step ladder to get to. There's 2 docks Do you remember that scene?
I mean,
okay.
In the original.
Yeah.
In the original, yeah. That heart container might be the bow, might be the magic wand, might be a heart container. So it's not necessarily just in dungeons. Yeah, it's not necessarily in dungeons.
I think the only things that they keep sanity checked are like keys.
That would make sense. Yeah, I highly recommend checking out Legend of Zelda Randomizer. They are a good time.
Yeah, I do want to get into it. I've seen so many people talk about it.
And calling back to something earlier, we were talking about Game Genie codes for. I mentioned the hammer code for the original Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah,
it's called Stagio.
Stagio.
Yeah. And what it does is it gives every single enemy hammers.
Okay, that sounds hard.
It's insane. It's like Goomba hammers.
I'm so
hammers.
down. I'm gonna stream.
You can't even do that in Mario Maker because the developers realized that would be too much like playing God.
I'm up for the challenge. I can't wait to give it a shot.
So, you think we're going to see a Zelda Maker at some point?
I hope so.
We did kind of, sort of. Like,
no, you're not talking about that thing in Link's Awakening, are you?
I'm talking about that thing in Link's Awakening.
Oh God, no! That's just those are pre-made rooms that are just like you can adjust wherever these are gonna be, but they're still just the rooms. So I hope so. I hope that they get a Zelda Maker. It could be incredibly easy for the Zelda 1 because those are literally like room to room dungeons. So, but obviously, I'm sure Nintendo's like, oh, that's not enough, But I hope that they do.
It's a lot easier to do crazy stuff with Mario than it is to do with Zelda. Because if you just put like a room in Zelda full of enemies and stuff, it just becomes annoying and not necessarily like a puzzle,
Sure, but
it would be 4
Dodongos instead of 2. Think about it. The possibilities are endless.
I might just mean more like a Zelda Maker may not be as hardcore as some of these Mario Maker things have been,
Yeah.
Just by its nature.
There has been something that is basically a Zelda Maker that has been around for probably the better part of 2 decades. It's called Zelda Classic.
Oh.
It's a fan thing.
It's a fan thing, but it has been around for holy crap. It just had its 20th anniversary last year.
Wow. And what's it called again?
Zelda Classic.
All right, so we got to do a Zelda Classic podcast talking about the 20-year anniversary of Zelda Classic.
And it lets you build Zelda worlds, dungeons, levels.
Yeah, like whole game.
Does it modify the ROM or?
Oh, it's like no, it is.
Is it just like resource packs, like all the sprites and stuff to let you add them into?
It's an actual like program.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at screenshots. There's like Link's Awakening, Link to the Past. Oh, like original Zelda. Pretty cool.
Mini Dungeon 4.
Oh, here's like BS Zelda, I think.
Interesting.
But it's an actual. It's a game, and it says it itself. It's a game, and it's an editing tool that lets you just make Zelda games.
Cool.
And it's been, as I said, been around the better part of 2 decades.
Now that we've made it public, Nintendo Nintendo's gonna take it.
Yeah, kind of sort. I don't know. It's been that's the thing. I don't know why it's I don't know. Let's not jinx it.
All right. I think that's about it. Unless there's anything else to say.
All right, cool, man.
I don't have anything else to say. I think we covered a lot of good content.
Yeah. Go play Zelda games.
Yeah, you recommend Zelda?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go with a hard yes.
Yeah.
But not Skyward Sword.
I'm gonna.
I mirror that opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree with you, but I understand. But
so I don't have a way to play Skyward Sword. You can't emulate it because of the motion controls. I'd have if I wanted to try it again, I'd have to borrow a Wii, wouldn't I?
Unless you have a Switch.
Hey Joey.
No.
Borrow your Wii.
We'll talk about this off. We'll talk about this off camera or off mic. But there are ways. There are ways.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
I mean, there are. If you want to spend $60, there's that Switch version.
Oh, that's right. No, I don't want to spend $60.
But
I don't know why, but I think I'm going to do it anyway.
I had a feat. I mean, you bought the version that had the Wiimote with it, so yeah.
Well, I had to because I didn't have a Wii Motion.
Yeah.
It was only like $10 extra. Plus, you got a CD with it.
I have 3 copies of the game.
Are they different versions or?
They're all the same version. I bought one, then someone gave me one, and then someone left one over my house, and now I have 3 copies of my least favorite version of Zelda. So yeah.
What is this cursed life you lead?
Yeah.
I know. It's like every year there's like another, like my friends have joked about the idea of sneaking in copies to just keep padding out my shelf with copies of Skyward Sword.
No, that's funny. You know what about Skyward? I'll say a redeeming thing. I didn't hate the final fight with Girahim where you had to use the motion plus to do the correct parrying. That was actually fun. I enjoyed that. But getting to him, having to beat the or whatever the thing with the toes, sucked.
Yeah, the toe man.
The toe man. I hated toe man, but I did like the having to parry
evil
things
Muppet.
correctly.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Yeah, but eventually, Groose helps you out, and like he's your bully to your ally, and
Groose is loose.
The Groose is
loose. Loose the Groose.
Loose.
Okay, that's probably a good ending.
All right.
Groose for Smash Brothers.
We need more random Earthbound kids.
There we go.
Oh yeah.
Gumatora for Smash.
Gumatora, Prince Pooh.
Dungeon Man.
Dungeon Man.
Okay.
He's too big.
The size of a dungeon.
All right. Thank you, she says.
It was my pleasure.
It was awesome meeting you.
Yeah, Brice, it was great talking to you. Dustin, great talking to you as well.
I can tell people that I have met and talked to a famous YouTuber.
And they'll be like, Brice, you need to go outside, man. This will not be the highlight of your day.
Brice, I was a famous Newgrounds-er. I
know. When I met you, I recognized your stuff.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Did like Sarah, my sister, have like a Kerrigan mouse pad or something?
Yep. We should probably still have that somewhere.
And then one of your kids will be a famous TikToker. You can't escape it.
You're living the dream.
Living the dream. Married to Kerrigan.
You play D&D with Ark.
I do. Oh, which one's Ark?
Dwarf. The green guy with the dreadlocks.
No. Which
like
one of our friends voices Ark?
I do.
Oh, I thought you were saying that we were other people that we play with.
No,
fine.
I voiced everyone back in the day, almost.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Technically, I don't play D&D with you. You run D&D.
That's true. We haven't been in a game where like we're just both we're both characters yet.
That's true.
All right. I think
that's another topic. Yeah, but she says you're welcome on anytime.
Thanks, man.
Brice, you're welcome on any time. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. You're welcome as long as you got a topic that appeals to me.
I'm always around, so
And Dustin, I guess you're kind of required to be on.
Well, hey, I'm not always on. I got a life. I got things I gotta do. Sometimes, maybe.
And probably the next time we'll do a podcast is for Falcon and Winter Soldier in a couple weeks. Have you watched that yet, Brice?
No, I haven't watched any of them. I'm waiting for him to. I don't like waiting a week for a new episode, so I'm waiting for them all to come out so I can binge.
Wow, you poor person having to wait a week for an episode.
Listen, in this day and age, you shouldn't have to do that. We are long past, 10 p.m. on Thursdays is the next episode of Friends.
I get what you're saying, man. Yeah. It's like being
Friends was on at 8.
It's like, did you hear that new Green Day album? Oh no, right now it's only on record, so you have to buy a record player to
release one song a week.
Yeah, one song a week, and they're each on records. It's like
you gotta buy a vinyl,
and then you get like a World War II veteran that's like, oh, I have to play it on a record player. Oh, poor you.
Yeah. So if you've seen that by the time we do that podcast, you're welcome on that one.
Is it as good as WandaVision? What you've seen so far?
No, I don't think it's as good.
Obviously, it's going to be different, but
yeah, it's not as good as WandaVision, but it's still been intriguing. I would say.
Cool.
Like this week's episode was a big one.
Okay, I'm sure I'll watch it. And if I can't get into it, then whatever, no big deal. But I am looking forward to Loki for sure.
Loki's gonna be fun. I mean, like WandaVision, when it clicks for you, it's like, oh, this is about grief. It kind of like restructures the entire show.
Yeah.
But with Falcon and Winter Soldier, I know it deals with some heavy subjects, but in the end of the day, it kind of is what it is on its face.
Okay.
No, Falcon and Winter Soldier, I hate spoiler, is about anger.
Okay. And that is good segue to a good advertisement for the upcoming podcast, right?
Indeed.
All right.
All right, thanks everyone, and check out Boundary Break. And
appreciate that.
See you next time.
Bye.
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 Fairly well.
Do.